Contemplate represents The Center with your host, DC Radical One.
Greetings, Black family, and welcome to On the Wake Up Radio. I am your host, DC Radical One, and you have entered the center. Shout out to our wonderful producer, Cindy Ashby. You can check us out at SoundCloud, YouTube, iTunes, Podcast, Google Play, Stitcher, Spotify, and iHeartRadio at On the Wake Up Radio. First of all, let me know that you all can hear me. Put a 1 in the chat if y'all can hear me so I can get started. Let's see. And the good brother Black Magus is probably not going to join us tonight. So I have to remember to do certain things myself. Okay, cool. All right. Our wonderful producer, Cindy Ashby, is joining us tonight. And y'all give her a black hand for joining us. She says she does not always get, that she doesn't always get notifications. Isn't that interesting? So tonight, what we're going to do, as I get myself together here, is we are going to do a end of the year review as I try to find my music. All right, here we go. This should be loading up any second. And y'all let me know if that's too loud. I think this is the normal setting, but I'm not 100% sure. All right, let's see. Let's do a check. Of course, we got wonderful producer Cindy Ashby, who says, Happy Kwanzaa. Happy Kwanzaa to you, sister. And it is Ujima Day or Ujima Night. Yeah, brother, you got ripped off. I heard. So you take care of your family. You take care of your family, and we'll talk. We got RS Mage checking in from Atlanta. All right. Appreciate you checking in. We got Sister Vanessa here. BB4 Day Straight Black Pride to you. Straight Black Pride to SU Ogun. And y'all send some BB4 Day Straight Black Pride to Brother Kevin. Y'all send some love and appreciation and positive energy to brother you got ripped off. So, dealing with a family issue tonight. BB4 Day Straight Black Pride to Black Pro Inc. And BB4 Day Straight Black Pride to Sydney G. I believe that's everyone that I saw in the chat thus far. So here's what we're going to do tonight. What we're going to do is there are some stories, major stories, that I missed during the year. When I looked, I'm like, okay, I missed this. Just plain and simple. And like sometimes I want to do a show on some things and I can't get the resources to present it how I want. Before they Straight Black Pride to before they Straight Black Pride to Straight Black Saw. And then there, excuse me, and then there are times where I'm not making content and major things happen, and I see them. Sometimes I may even post them on Instagram or whatever, but I never get around to making content about them. So there are like 3 or 4 major global stories about, black people that affect black people globally that I am that I'm going to deal with today. So first of all, the first thing we're going to talk about, because we're doing international and local, we got to talk about Bill Gates in Africa. Now, for those of you who have been following me for years and have, that reminds me. And those of you that have looked at my lectures before, I've talked about Bill Gates and his jabs, and that was also in Kenya. Right. There was a big controversy in Kenya around Bill Gates before. Now Bill Gates is doing digital ID for babies. We're going to get to that story shortly. What I wanted to mention is, at this moment, Black Power to Nubian Patah, at this moment, I'll let you all know now, and hopefully by next week I can get a flyer together. I might have to do it myself, so it won't be as elaborate as beautiful as normal. It is what it is. We're in discussions with Baba Zulu to move the lectures that I do annually, normally for the Chancellor Williams Day and Dr. Khalid Abdul Muhammad Day. We're going to move those lectures to February, and I'm negotiating to do back-to-back Black History Month lectures. So the lectures are, the format of the lectures are the same. The lectures were kind of designed, no, actually not really. How can I put it? Anyway, they were, the way they shaped, they kind of became part of the same series of lectures. So I'm going to do Africa versus Everybody 1 and Africa versus Everybody 2, The Hidden Enemies, back to back in February. That's the plan right now. So first of all, how many people in the chat have seen me do a lecture before? Y'all can put a Y up if you have. And second of all, after that, y'all can let me know whether or not y'all think that is a good idea. Of course, I know Sis Farnessa, she's always supported those. So that is the plan with that. And like I said, I will, when I know, my music is just, I don't know what the music supposed to be looped. I don't know what happened with that. Should run that back. But all right. So that is that's the plan there. And I'm just waiting for confirmation from, okay. Thank you all for saying that's a great idea. Waiting for confirmation from Baba Zulu. And actually, I just thought about it. The reason I'm not doing the show tomorrow is because I'll be going to see Baba Zulu tomorrow. So, DVD, probably not. I have thought about, because the editing process is so, because so few people want physical media nowadays, because physical media costs, probably not. The editing process of doing them has made me say, there's a minimum as far as projected sales I have to reach for me to, because I'll have to edit them myself, basically, for me to take the time to edit them and get them on a platform, because I wanted them to be on a Black-owned platform. That's looking less and less likely. I was hoping that Sister Cindy would be able to pull something off, but if there's enough demand, Brother Crow, then I'll make them available for digital download. I'll put it that way. So that is that's all the announcements. Again, the Instagram is running along the bottom, DC.Radical1 for those who don't know. Got one of my Twitters back is DC Radical _ONE. Of course, the OTW2 at DC Radical1. And for those that like to donate, the Cash App is $DC Radical1. Oh no, I do have one more announcement. Then we'll get started. I'm currently working to chop it down, but this weekend, part 1 of the Irritated Genie interview that was taken off of YouTube, I don't know if you all noticed that or not, that is going up exclusively on OTW2. So you can't do it here, it'll be there, as I've said before. And also, for anyone who has you have a small business or a service, we're still looking for sponsors for the show for 2024. So again, email me. It's running along the bottom now. If you are interested in sponsoring a show, or you would like the monthly promo package, email me at dc.radical_1@protonmail.com. Now, let's get into this, because we got a few major stories. First of all, I don't know how many of y'all saw this story. I saw this story I think I first saw it probably a couple of months ago, or maybe back during the summer. And those of you all who know me know, one, I talked about the Great Reset. I've been talking about the Great Reset probably since 2020, and all the different aspects of that. We've been talking about Bill Gates, Klaus Schwab, so forth and so on. How can I put it? What I wasn't paying attention to was how much the tentacles of these apparatus are already in Africa. I'm not gonna lie. I wasn't paying attention because I was just looking at how this stuff is going to affect us. We're about to be in 2024. Their agendas that they want to have implemented by 2030, which means we only have 6 years to fight this stuff. 2030, as crazy as it sounds to me, is literally around the corner. So this first story will just show you some of the things that we'll be facing. Says Kenya's digital ID boosted by Gates Foundation, but government struggles to convince citizens. And this is from a website called biometricupdate.com. And we see the Bill and Melinda Gates building. I wonder if that's the one in DC. Anyway, says Kenya's digital ID project, known as Maisha Namba, will receive advice from the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. Let's stop right there. No, they're not receiving advice. They're bowing to the will of the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. Let's not pretend as if this is the idea of the Kenyan government. That's false. This is an idea coming out of the World Economic Forum, and the Kenyan government is bowing to the will of the Gates Foundation, because the Gates Foundation, Bill Gates, are a major part of the World Economic Forum. That's it. Now, let's move forward. The global charity group started by the Microsoft founder, will help connect the Kenyan government to key technical experts and partners. Mark Sussman, CEO at the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, told Business Daily Africa. We have a number of specific investment support on digital identity. We actually provided to broader platforms, Sussman, on the sidelines of the World Bank and International Monetary Fund meetings in Marrakesh, Morocco. All right, let's stop right there. We see this shows you how all these different NGOs and all these global international organizations and things are interconnected. You have the Gates Foundation, you have the World Bank, and you have the IMF, which again have all been mentioned here. And then you have Kenya as part of the digital ID program. So this paragraph goes to show you this is not some Kenyan idea. This is an idea that came from these other people being imposed by Kenya, and we see that you could either benefit because of IMF and World Bank or be punished by the IMF and the World Bank. And this goes back to the book that I always reference, Confessions of a what's the name of the book? Confessions of a Economic Hitman. Yeah, thank you. Confessions of an Economic Hitman. All right, so let's move forward. Masha Namba is a unique personal identification number assigned to every Kenyan citizen. The number is assigned to the Masha card as a digital identification credential. The country has been preparing for the $6.8 million launch. That's US dollars, by the way, of the biometric digital ID system for the past several months. At the beginning of October, however, Kenyan authorities postponed this launch due to unfavorable circumstances. Quote unquote. Unfavorable circumstances means the people are starting to understand what's going on and they're like, no, I'm not with this. That's all that means. The project has been met with skepticism in some parts of the country. I bet. Residents of the eastern Kenyan city of Garissa say that they are not ready for the Masha Namba rollout due to poor infrastructure and network availability. Residents also claim that the local nomadic culture would make it difficult for them to use the digital ID system and have asked the government to reconsider the launch. The Kenyan newspaper The Star reports. The Kenya Kwanza government seems to have forgotten its promise to make the process of acquiring an ID card, birth certificate, and passports less tedious for our people, says rights activist Aiden Abdullahi. He claims the government is backtracking on its promise to stop vetting people seeking identification cards, and that rogue government officials are seizing the opportunity to demand bribes in return for vetting. I'm gonna just be honest. When you're dealing with Africa and you're dealing with the governments, like petty, low-level corruption is literally always around the corner. Like not the type of corruption that we have here in America, which is like massive, like massive corporation corruption. Nah, not like that. It's like just petty little corruption where some little small guy that's in charge of something. It's just like, yeah, if you grease my palms here, then I can help you out over here. That type of thing. From everyone I've talked to, people from Africa, people from America who've gone in Africa, that's like standard operating procedure. So this article, that part of the article, doesn't surprise me at all. Now, says rights groups have also been expressing concern over the possibility of discrimination and the erosion of privacy. Rightly so. The organizations argue that the government is repeating the mistakes of Kenya's previous ID system, Huduma Namba, which was declared unconstitutional, by the government's High Court in October 2021 for conflicting with its Data Privacy Act. So that's interesting. So they're just doing an end around. Oh, okay. The Kenyan government has attempted to reassure its citizens to its commitment to the inclusion and protection of data privacy. Now, let's stop right there for a minute. Can we be honest for a moment? The type of technological infrastructure and technological acumen that it would take to protect the data of people in Kenya probably doesn't exist in Kenya. You know why? Because it doesn't exist in America. Let me just be completely honest. Before to Sister Tia. We hear about hacking of major companies in America seemingly every week, if you're paying attention. So the idea that the Kenyan government is going to be able to do something that multinational corporations in America can't do, it's possible, but it's not likely. Think about it. You know what I'm saying? Like, people hack information daily. Some people, that's their job. Like, they make their money hacking information. Now, with some limited technical knowledge and having studied some things at school, I understand that, generally speaking, it's lax security and just sometimes dumb oversight that allows some of these hacks. Like, for example, there are times when people's basic information that should be encrypted at a high level of encryption is not. There's other times where there's just lax security as far as people not following certain protocols, and that allows people's information to get out. But I'm saying, think about it. If those companies can't seem to get the job done, you think the Kenyan government really can? I mean, it's possible, but I'm just saying, if they understood how hard it is for, these companies to get this stuff right, they would definitely be fighting as hard as they can. Now, says speaking at a forum in the Wanjohi in the central Kenyan, oh man, I'm just struggling here. Anyway, the central Kenyan county on Monday, government officials, including Deputy County Commissioner Rukia Chicheki, noted that the country's national registration and identity system is lagging behind other countries, putting Kenya at risk of non-compliance with international enforcement agency standards. Hold up, let's stop right there. Who's in charge of telling your country that you have to meet a standard for? When did that become a thing? I hadn't read. Y'all know how I do. I pick these articles, I scan them, but I don't read through them all the way through. Now, let's ask a question. Y'all tell me. If there's an international body enforcing these type of standards in regards to national registration and identity, who's in charge of that? Y'all give me one guess who y'all think is in charge of that. Anyway, Masha Namba is also expected to address different challenges such as identifying and authenticating citizens, safeguarding primary registration documents such as birth certificates and national identity cards, and improving the management of social programs and government operations. The number will also be used to register for government services, including education, health insurance, tax, and social security, the officials said. After the sensitization program, the system shall be run through schools by ensuring, listen to this now, by ensuring every child born is assigned a Masha Namba and shall use that number through school and after they attain 18 years. The number will translate to Masha Namba. To ensure safety, the system will include cryptographic technology for data security, and support web-based and offline identity authentication, digital signatures, and access to e-service platforms, according to the Deputy County Commissioner. The government has also promised that a third-generation ID card will not be mandatory and will not require individuals to register anew. It will instead rely on the current civil registration system. So there's a part here that wasn't mentioned. The new children will receive the digital ID number, but the digital ID will be implanted in the children as soon as they're born. Take all the time that you need to process that. Ujima and Straight Black Pride to Sister Nina. Think about what I just said, brother and sister. They're implementing it across the country, and they're implementing it with the children. But what that article did not mention is that something is going to be implanted in the children in order for it to be scanned. So that's the reason I wanted to bring that up, is because one, it just goes to show how much under the influence of groups like the World Economic Forum, various countries in Africa is. And here's the reality of the situation. The world has shrunk. The things that you see being tested, it's like everything else in the world. Everything is always tested on black people. Then it's brought to the doorstep of everyone else. And then everyone else, especially white people, look around and be like, wait a minute, how did this happen? We didn't vote for this. We didn't want this to happen. Oh, we got to stop it. While the stuff has been rolling down the pipe. So I'm sure there are very few white people who listen to the show. I'm letting y'all know now. You see it in Africa, it's coming to your doorstep here in America. That's just the way it works nowadays. So, time to fight it is now. Don't wait till 2029, because then it's going to be too late. All right, so let's read the second article on this real quick. It says, and this is from a Kenya newspaper. Yeah, the Mount Kenya Times. Okay. From our sister Cynthia Masibo. It says Bill Gates urges President Ruto to implement new digital ID system for newborns in Kenya. Here's a picture right here. I'll just say this. Y'all tell me whose side Ruto was on if he's with this. So it says, in a recent meeting, philanthropists, that's one word for him, and Microsoft co-founder Bill Gates has urged President William Ruto of Kenya to consider the implementation of a new digital ID system for newborns in the country. This proposal aims to improve access to vital services and healthcare for all Kenyan children, enhance government record keeping, and support overall development efforts. Stop right there. Let me tell you something. Whenever you hear the word development, the word development is akin to urban renewal, right? Whenever you hear words like that, you're in trouble. Especially if you black, you're in trouble. Urban renewal, that was a word they used to say back in the day. That meant Negro removal. Whenever you hear development and things like that on the African continent, that means exploitation. Greetings and be before to raw ito vital. So, I mean, here we are. It says the new digital ID system. Gates proposed a comprehensive digital ID system that would assign a unique identification number to every newborn in Kenya. This ID will be linked to their health records, vaccination history, and other essential information. The system would utilize secure and modern technology to ensure digital privacy and security. All right, I got a question for y'all, because I see that this is something that has to be put on the table. Y'all tell me, Is it worth me doing a lecture later this year on Agenda 2030 or Great Reset, which are all these things are interconnected? If that's something y'all think will be worthwhile later in the year, y'all let me know. You can put a Y or N, if you for it or against it. Y'all let me know. Because the more I look at this stuff, the more it's like someone has to research this stuff and break it down more thoroughly than I'm able to do here. So let's move forward. Says key objectives: improve access to healthcare. Now this is what they're saying is for. So we're gonna take it everything with a grain of salt. The digital ID system would make it easier for parents to access healthcare services for their newborns, including y'all know what the first thing is, including vaccinations, medical checkups, and emergency care. Says efficient government record keeping. The digital IDs would assist the Kenyan government in maintaining accurate and up-to-date records of its citizens, allowing for more effective policy planning and resource allocation. And then targeted, quote-unquote, development initiatives. With a better understanding of the population's needs, the government can implement targeted development initiatives to improve education, nutrition, and overall well-being of children in Kenya. Now, I'm going to say this. The United States government does a census every 10 years. They got cameras everywhere in the cities. They, you have the highest level of technology and stuff. They can go through everybody's phone whenever they're like. And let's be completely honest. Most people in America, well, I ain't gonna say most people, but a lot of people in America, black, white, Asian, you name it, except for one group of people, are struggling mightily. So, good luck. That's all I'm gonna say. I'm gonna say America is amongst the most technologically advanced places on earth. And yeah, none of that stuff is helping. Because the simple fact of the matter is, if we're being completely honest, if your government is corrupt, then it's being corrupted by people who are giving you the idea to implement these systems, not for your benefit, that's a lie, but for their benefit. Thus, all of this is largely irrelevant for the people of Kenya as far as helping them, but very relevant for how it will change their lives. Let me move forward. Says support and collaboration. Bill Gates has expressed his willingness, of course, to support the Kenyan government in the development and implementation of this digital ID system. Of course he is. It's his idea. Drawing on the expertise of Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation in healthcare and technology. Now, first of all, the Bill and Melinda Gates expertise in healthcare. That's one way to put it. Anyway, says President Ruto's response. President Ruto has welcomed Bill Gates' proposal, obviously, and has promised to convene a task force to explore the feasibility and potential challenges of implementing the system. He has emphasized the importance of safeguarding the privacy and security of citizens' data, which we already talked about, while moving forward with this initiative. As Kenya considers the implementation of a new digital system for newborns, this proposal has the potential to bring about significant improvements in healthcare and social services for the country's youngest people. The collaboration between Bill Gates and President Ruto signals a strong commitment to the well-being of Kenya's children. That is our sister Cynthia Masibo. I'm going to say this. No knock to the sister, but considering that Bill Gates is indeed a genocidal maniac who believes in population quote unquote control, putting your health and your digital security in the hands of a person who believes there are too many people on the planet, it's not exactly the smartest idea. This is my personal opinion on the issue. I'm not an expert in many things, but I am an expert in what I call EID, which is enemy identification. I, along with some others, help identify the enemies of Black people around the world. And without question, Bill Gates is one of those. Be voting straight Black pride to Brother Elijah. Always glad to see you in the chat. Now, I have a video talking about this from Kenya, actually, from a Kenya channel. So what we're going to do is we're going to pause the music and we are going to check out this video real quick, and we're going to hear the opinions of a Kenyan news source on this issue.
It's worse. The Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation is continuing its global push to support its so-called government-backed digital ID programs, and this time setting its sight on Kenya, where it will advise the government on that country's Maisha Namba digital ID initiative that is currently under development. So, according to a Kenyan news agency, Gates' role is assisting the Kenyan government in its development, and the rollout of Maisha Namba was announced after a recent series of the closed-door meetings with Kenyan President William Ruto. According to Biometric Update, Maisha Namba is supposedly expected to address different challenges, such as identifying and authenticating citizens, safeguarding primary registration documents such as birth certificates and national identity cards, and improving the management of the social programs and government operations. The project has been met with skepticism in some parts of the country. Rights groups have also been expressing concern over the possibility of discrimination and the erosion of privacy. But listen, I just told you in a very nice way. Now let me just put it blatantly to you. The program targets the birth of new babies. So once you have your baby, before your baby leaves the hospital, you no longer get a paper birth certificate, but then you get a digital one that is somehow implanted somewhere on somebody's body. Think about that, but have a listen to this.
The digital ID, which has been a big problem to us for a very long time, is now on a testing mode for the next 2 months. I have been assured by all the stakeholders, led by the ministries concerned, that by December, we will be able to launch digital ID, where every Kenyan don't have to carry any paper, plastic or otherwise, as an ID, that they should be able to be identified digitally using their iris or their fingerprints, and we can transact without the necessity of people struggling to identify who they are. And the proudest part of it is that we don't have to spend the billions that we have spent on all the other manenos, as all of you know.
We're taking things that are, genetically modified organisms, and we're injecting them in little kids' arms. We just shoot them right into the vein.
Kenya is in serious trouble. Now, for you to accept this, that means you're going to be completely surveilled and controlled. Think about it. So they have targeted the new babies, of course, even the ordinary citizens, the grown-ups, the young ones, the teenagers, and even the elderly ones will receive this digital ID. But they will then create a new generation where they'll be completely under this digital ID and they have no choice.
And I don't even know that sister's name, but yeah, I agree with her assessment 100%. And I forgot that clip where Bill Gates is talking about injecting people with GMOs and all. I forgot that was in there. If there are any people in Kenya who are listening to this, Dr. Moonby, if you happen to stumble across this video, warn your people about these things. Please. This is a bad idea. I understand the need for people that have identification and be able to access the government resources they need and things like that. But this is yeah, this is bad. This is bad. Greetings to Russell Lewis says Kenya is in trouble. And your comment just reminded me of something I want to talk about. So let me diverge away from the Kenya story right now. Has anyone seen a movie called The Creator? Because I was thinking about doing a movie review on it. I happened to watch it earlier this week. If you have not seen the movie, it came. I'm pretty sure it came out. It was in movie theaters early this year. Yeah, because I remember seeing the advertisement, and I thought about seeing it. And I'm gonna be honest when it comes to movies. I see an advertisement for a movie. I say, "Oh, that's interesting." But now you can't always, if you don't pay attention, you can't tell what's in the theaters and like what's on Netflix or what's straight to streaming. So I thought I saw it that it was coming out, and it has John David Washington, Denzel's son, in it. And I was like, that looks interesting. I can't quite tell what it's about. And then I saw it. I'll just say this because y'all gonna be like, bro, how does this relate to what we're just talking about? The Creator is the second pro transhumanism movie that I've seen. The first one was with Johnny Depp. I can't remember the name of the movie, but in the movie, he was a scientist. He was dying, and he uploaded his consciousness to the web. Essentially, that was what that movie was about. This movie is different, and I will give you the context of how I can describe it best. If you've seen The Matrix, think about a prequel to The Matrix from the perspective of the machines, right? That's generally how that's my general synopsis of the movie. Of course, it gets more complex than that. It's a pretty good movie, entertainment wise, but I was so busy seeing the subliminal messages that entertainment part kind of got thrown to the back. Because once it got further into the movie, I was like, oh, because it you never really sure where it goes. But once I started seeing it, I was like, oh, this is what they're doing. This is what's going on. I'm like, wow, this is crazy. So no, brother, that is Tenet, the movie where they go back and forth. Now that is an excellent movie. That's a phenomenal film. I'm not gonna lie, Christopher Nolan is low key one of my favorite directors. And I say low key because a lot of times I don't realize that he's making movies that I like, but Tenet's a movie that I like. Of course, the Batman films and Inception. Like, those are some of my favorite movies. Those are his movies. But anyway, this movie, this is somebody else. He didn't direct this, but like I said, J.D. Washington's in it. And I put it like this. If you get a chance to watch it, check it out. If y'all think it's worth me doing a movie review, I will. But y'all gotta let me know if y'all want a spoiler or spoiler-free review of it. Let's see. Sister Cindy, you sent me. What'd you send me? I see you said you sent me something. Yeah, that's the movie. Yeah, that's it. So, yeah, the brother's comment and this whole story with Kenya those things kind of intersect. Now, that was a major story, and like I said, I didn't cover it. But, well, let me ask you, how many people knew about that situation in Kenya? Oh, no, better yet, how many of y'all didn't know about that situation in Kenya? If you didn't know about it, put it in the chat, because again, I knew about it, but I wasn't paying serious attention. And as we see, they've gone way down the rabbit hole. So now I stumbled upon this while looking at that, because of course it's from the same website. This from Biometric Update. And it says Burundi promises biometric ID cards before 2025, which means by the end of next year, which starts next week. Says Burundi will spare no effort in providing its residents with biometric identification cards before the 2025 elections. The Ministry of Interior says the project is at an advanced stage, according to Interior Minister Martin Neteretse, who recently addressed local media. The new biometric IDs will replace paper ones and are seen as critical requirement for the democratic process in the East African country, helping prevent multiple voting, age misrepresentation, and election fraud. The card will also function as a travel document among Burundi's East African neighbors that have signed to a regional agreement on free movement. Burundi's ID cards will store fingerprint biometrics along with demographic information and a facial photograph. The country has held successful trials for printing biometric cards and disseminated the necessary equipment to 11 pilot municipalities. But the project has also seen long delays. Registrations to obtain biometric IDs started in 2013. The new IDs are also meant to curb fraud, simplify travel, and improve digitization of the state. Burundians have been taking advantage of the old cards to escape legal proceedings, hide their marital status, and commit other types of fraud, according to the minister. The biometric ID will come with a unique identifier that the holder will use for life. In 2022, research by ICT think tank CEPESA called out African governments for allegedly collecting, storing, and managing biometric data of their citizens without appropriate mechanisms to ensure digital protection and privacy. Burundi was one of the countries mentioned in the report. Now, that technology that you saw is simply a precursor to what Bill Gates is trying to implement, right? Again, this from the same source. This is a website and an organization that advocates for this type of technology. So this is something I've learned in the last few years, right? Last 5 years or so. Sometimes literally all you have to do is just go to the source. Like, no one's hiding anything anymore. People are making announcements for stuff. They're telling you what they're going to do. And a lot of times, if you want to find out, you just go there. That's why for a couple of years, up until probably the end of last year, from like, I don't know, maybe 2019 or so, I would just go to the World Economic Forum website and see what they did. In 1 year, I just tried to watch as many of the different, what do they call them? They have their own breakout rooms and stuff and side sessions, but I forgot what they called them. But anyway, I literally just watched as many of those as I could. It's incredible the amount of information that you see, the number of initiatives that they have, and the amount of stuff that they've been trying to implement for years. Like, there's a whole that this is literally this is God's honest truth. This is literally the administrative wing of the one world government, and they're telling you all this stuff they're going to implement and all these ideas, and they're literally handing homework out to world leaders, and there's not a soul. Of course, I'm not going to say not a soul, but in reality, there are very few people on planet Earth who even paying attention to this stuff. So when somebody like Yuval Noah Harari talks about hacking the DNA of life, nobody's paying attention to it. Like, this stuff isn't conspiracy theory. You can just go to the website, put the stuff in, and just sit there and watch it. When they start talking about transhumanism and changing people's DNA and all this stuff, I'm not gonna lie. I used to think this stuff was ridiculous. I was like, now, and I'm old enough to remember when the Matrix came out, and I'm just looking at it, and this is one thing that happens. You look at something, you think, wow, that's crazy. Man, that was a great movie. And you don't realize that they're working on this stuff for real. They're just showing you where they at, which means they've advanced past that point. But it sounds ridiculous. And then when you tell somebody, they're like, oh man, you got that from that movie. So people don't even pay you any attention because they think you're talking about something that you saw in Hollywood, when in reality, what you saw in Hollywood is the earlier version of the stuff that they already working. So, excuse me for my rant. So the next thing, hold up. I did ask y'all a question, and okay, I saw a lot of ends. So a lot of people weren't aware. Yeah, brother Crow. Yeah, that transhumanism, brother. Yeah, that's what's going on right now. So the next thing I want to talk about. Wow. Okay, that's interesting. They just like, no, you gonna sign up for this newspaper whether you like it or not. Democratic Republic of Congo. Those of you all who have seen my lectures know that I have talked about the Congo from the perspective of Patrice Lumumba, his betrayal, the destruction of his government, and what happened afterwards. Those of you who are familiar with Brother Genie's work know that he talked about it from the perspective of what was happening from, and I can't believe I'm drawing a blank on the guy all of a sudden, but the psychopath who engineered the murder of 16 million Congolese when he was ruling, King Leopold of Belgium. So now here we are, and people are talking about the Congo again, talking about murder in the Congo again, genocide in the Congo again. And people started paying attention again. Now, the reason people are paying attention is because the fighting has gotten horrible again. And I haven't really covered it. So we're going to cover that today because, again, what we're doing is we're looking at major stories from the past, which will obviously affect us in the future. So let's start with this one. And who is this from? The Republic. And it says the back end of genocide. The Democratic Republic of Congo is facing a humanitarian crisis as miners are forced to work under exploitative conditions, which amount to modern day slavery. The mining industry, because of its high demand, is host to various human rights violations, including child labor. Now, I'm going to need y'all to help me out with something. There is and let me see if I can find it, if I kept his name on my phone. There is a guy named Elaine, or a family, the Getz family, Goetz, Elaine and Tony, and I think Sylvain is another one. They are a Belgian family that have a lot of they do a lot of mining in the Congo. Sometimes you see them listed as gold dealers, sometimes you see them listed as something else. I need someone to find out for me if these people are hats, because that was a name when I started looking at this that came up. And Sister Cindy says, "Free the Congo, the hats stealing diamonds, and the Congo people labor for free. Dan Gertier worth trillions thanks to the Congo." So that's another name. Let me oops, my bad. Let me put that up for the people so they can see it. Thank you, Sister Cindy. So that's another person, Dan Gertier. That's another person that we should look up. I'm thinking about, and I might do this once a month. I am thinking about, and y'all let me know whether y'all like this or not. I'm thinking about doing a monthly video on enemies of Black people. And what's crazy is more and more enemies of Black people are kind of becoming like enemies of more than Black people, which is so weird for me. Being completely honest. Sis Vanessa, you said that. Oh, you said they are hats. Okay, I suspected, but I couldn't find documentation because there are a lot of hats in Belgium. And, you know, a big time secret is that like some of these old companies that were around in the 1500s that were Belgian companies that helped sponsor quote unquote exploration and insured ships and stuff like that. A lot of those companies were hat owned, but they masquerade under that national flag, and so a lot of people don't know that, including there's a lot of Europeans that don't know. So, thank you for letting me know that. So let's get into this Congo situation, which is of course heartbreaking. And it says that on December 20th, 2023, the Democratic Republic of the Congo will head to the polls for a general election. These elections have caused worries that the current insecurity in the region will lead to increased violence for citizens. In response to the violence on November 8th, 2023, a video of a man who set himself on fire holding a Stop the Genocide in Congo sign went viral on X, formerly known as Twitter, as we know. Oops. A little too aggressive there. Just as Nigeria has oil and South Africa has diamonds, the DRC has cobalt. African countries with extensive reserves of precious raw metals often find themselves prey to irresponsible leadership and the greed of Western powers. Let's stop right there. Let's be honest. We've all read Diary of an Economic Hitman. Leaders are put in place, and then if they don't play ball, they have plane crashes, car crashes, mysterious illnesses, or plane disappear off the planet. These are facts, right? And Sister Farnessa says, we can't forget about the genocide of Papua New Guinea. Right. I'm not going to say we were the first, but Straight Black Pride was some of the first people to really put that into the atmosphere and let people know about that situation. And Papua New Guinea, I don't even know how many years ago that was now. So here's the reality, and I'm gonna put that up. I'm gonna try to put that up. Let's try again. All right. Here's the reality when you start looking at this stuff. Black people around the world are under assault. And what happens is we many times, especially in Africa, this is really the case. But we should know because here in Black people in America, anyway. Oftentimes we'll see some black people who are opposition, who are murdering other black people. We'll see black leadership that is corrupt. We'll see everything black, and we won't see the hidden hand behind it. So I'll give you a perfect example. A perfect example. Seemingly everyone, though not everyone, is talking about how bad hip hop is now, how destructive it is, how negative it is, how bad it is for women, how it objectifies women, all the negative stuff, right? And so if you're not black, you see black people complaining about a black art that they invented and how it's destroying them, and you're like, okay, then do something about it. What you don't see is that the hats run every aspect of the music industry. And they control who gets big and who doesn't. They control who you hear and who you don't. They control all those things. And so it just looks like black people complain about black people. When in reality, the people who control what's going on, you don't see. That's how it works in Africa. It's the same thing. On the surface, you see black people doing things, and you see some black people that are allegedly in control, but the people behind it who are either encouraging or forcing them to do stuff, right? Again, Confessions of Economic Hitman will show you what's really going on. So, Kanye's, it says Vanessa said that Kanye had apologized. Okay. Anyway, Brother Kevin says around 7-8 years ago, 2015, 2016 or so, with us talking about West Papa. Thank you. So that's how these situations work. And that's how this situation in Congo is working. Now, it says the DRC, with the largest reserves of cobalt in the world, is no exception. As of October 2023, 6.9 million Congolese people have been displaced due to violence and quote unquote rebel attacks. Some of that displacement, about 400 households in October, has been directly linked to forced evictions driven by cobalt mining. Mining in the DRC has particularly gained attention, albeit insufficient, due to its association with grave human rights violations and exploitation, along with fierce international competition that leeches off of it. Cobalt is a hard, lustrous silver gray metal that is often extracted as a byproduct of nickel and copper mining. It has a variety of industrial applications, but it is perhaps most well known as a critical component in the production of rechargeable lithium-ion batteries used in electric vehicles, smartphones, laptops, and other electronic devices. In other words, if you can send messages, browse the internet, or ride an electric car or plane, cobalt has been used as a production component. While cobalt is an essential element, exposure to high levels of the metal can be toxic. Occupational exposure, particularly in mining and processing operations, is a concern. Let's stop right there. Simply put, Africa, particularly the Congo, has one of the most important resources on earth underneath its feet. And the modern world basically cannot exist without the exploitation of the Congo. If Africa were to close its borders and unify as a confederation and simply put out everyone who simply isn't black, the world would simply stop. Because of cobalt, we're having this conversation right now. We couldn't even have the conversation without this mineral. And Sister Farnessa says, aren't they using the Rwandan military to keep the DRC subjugated? That the situation is so complex. The Rwandans are involved. The Ugandans are involved. Of course, the West is propping up various groups inside the country. So pretty much everybody that's in the area and all the international people you can think of are involved. So I know a lot of people like the Rwandan president, because he, sometimes he mouths off to the West. I've seen him sitting next to Bill Gates too many times and too many pictures for me to take that dude seriously. He's not opposing what's going on. So, yeah, there's that. Says Cobalt's importance in defense became clear in the First World War, 1914 and 1918, which only grew in the Second World War, 1939 to 1945, as the U.S. importation of cobalt from the DRC grew 12-fold from 1938 to 1943 to support the production of jet engines. To keep up with the high demands, cobalt mine production in the DRC experienced a growth of 20% yearly, 20% increase annually. The multi-purpose use of cobalt also made it a source of power in global politics. Stop right there. So, and it's not talking about this, but I'll talk about it. And maybe it talks about it here later, but I don't know. Let's think about what that said. So, as far back as World War I, up to World War II, cobalt was used for military purposes. Now, we understand why Patrice Lumumba was murdered, amongst many reasons. Patrice Lumumba reaching out for assistance to non-Western countries meant that if he makes a deal with non-Western countries to, let's say, receive military assistance, and let's say you just take the military assistance from a non-Western country, somewhere like Cuba or the Soviet Union at the time, and reverse engineer their technology with your resources, within probably 10 years, you will be able to have the type of technology to make Congo at the time an advanced military, the most advanced military in Africa, including South Africa at the time, because you have the resources before they the brother island that other people don't have access to. So Lumumba's murder literally stopped the technological rise of Africa in its tracks, because modern warfare was dependent upon resources underneath the Congolese feet, and they probably didn't even know. Now we see how much bigger this was, because people always forget. Lumumba and Nkrumah and I believe Ahmed Sekou Toure were making a confederation, right? That's Ghana and Congo, and Toure was, somebody help me out. I know somebody knows what Ahmed Sekou Toure was the government of which country. But the point being, if you're able to build a military, see, this is one of the things that's always been missing in Africa. I've talked about this in my lectures. Military technology, the lack thereof, has been the single most thing limiting African development, right? It's not that Africa doesn't have enough people. It's not that Africa doesn't have enough resources. It's not even necessarily that Africa doesn't have enough unity. Because Guinea-Bissau, thank you, KW Dom. Because here's the reality of the situation. You have to look at politics the way you look at gangsterism. Right? John Henry Clark said this a long time ago. Looking at geopolitical situation. If your homeboy, right? Let's say another neighborhood. Let's say Europe is another neighborhood. And they've been coming over there and they've been doing whatever they want to do. You know what I'm saying? They come over there and they make your businesses, your local businesses pay tribute to them, like the mafia. And then let's say, and man, they do it because they got Tommy guns, right? And you don't have Tommy guns. You got a couple of 6-shooters, but you don't have no Tommy guns. And then let's say one of your homeboys, let's say you're not Congo, but one of your homeboys is like, you know what? I got a Tommy gun, and more so, I have a stash of ammo. I have been had the ammo, I just didn't have a Tommy gun. But now I can take the Tommy gun, and I know how to. Once I learn how to re-engineer it, we can all have Tommy guns, and I got unlimited ammo. Well, suddenly, the European gangsters can't come and take over and tax you and do all that stuff. That stuff's not going to happen because you have equal weapons. Like when you read about the wars in Africa, they never talk about. Here's what we never do. We do not put what happened to Black people or what happens to Black people around the world in the context of a war against Black people. But if you describe it to people and you take the names off, you're like, whoa, that sounds like a war. And that's exactly what it is. So we have to put it in the context that there's been a war against Black people. And the war, let's be real, the people who are in charge of the war have now come to the conclusion that there are too many Black people, especially in Africa, and even here in America. And so we have to find a way to limit the number of Black people. Africa has the youngest population, and they're experiencing currently a population boom as places like Italy and even the European part of the United States population decrease. Right? So these other places, even China is experiencing a decline in population. But Africa is experiencing a boom in population. So, as I was saying, when you look at the wars in Africa and you read about like the Zulu versus I believe the Boers and what they were able to do, you got to understand, people with spears and cowhide shields and bows and arrows and muskets were going against people with Gatling guns and winning, and Gatling guns and cannons. Well, what do you think would have happened if the Gatling gun wasn't invented or the Gatling gun wasn't brought over there? Who wins the fight? Now, because for the last 500-600 years or so, there's never been a fair fight with Africans and other people as far as technology. If you give Black people access to military technology, everyone stops. That's why one of the things that they did in South Africa when they so-called turned over the rule to Black people is they dismantled all the nuclear weapons. You see what I'm saying? They dismantled all the nuclear weapons and they kept most of the economy in their hands. And when we look at boards and all this and that and so forth, so on, a lot of times when you see these people run around with these different names, a large percentage of them are, y'all fill in the blanks in the chat. Now, let me get back to this article after I've gone on a long tangent. So as y'all see, since this is going to be the last live stream of the year, we just gonna be here a while. You know, I got at least another hour. It is what it is. All right. Now, the DRC, despite being a major source and exporter of some of the world's most valuable minerals, including copper, gold, coltan, cobalt, and diamonds, as well as having the second largest forest in the world after the Amazon, remains one of the poorest countries in the world. 5.7 million people in the country are also displaced, and 1 in 4 Congolese people cannot meet their basic food needs. The disproportionate reality signals a major humanitarian crisis resulting from exploitation and injustices such as child labor, unsafe working environments, and corruption. Cobalt and slavery. While history books remember the transatlantic slave trade as a heinous injustice, we are currently facing a plague of quote-unquote modern slavery, which according to hold on, I lost my place, my bad. The United Nations International Labor Organization amounts to 49.6 million people as of 2021. The DRC produces more than 60% of the world's supply of cobalt, which is mined at the country's copper belt. Of the 255,000 Congolese citizens mining cobalt, at least 40,000 of them So at least 16%, 40,000 of the 255,000 of them are children. Much of this work is informal, small-scale mining where laborers primarily use their hands and earn less than $2 a day. That's crazy. According to American non-governmental organization World Vision, got to be careful about them GMOs, mined minerals are often hazardous and exposure to some can have profound health effects. There's also a constant risk of falling into open mine shafts, being trapped or injured by collapsing tunnels, or drowning while mining underwater. In a survey, World Vision also found that 19% of miners have witnessed a child die at a mining site. That's 1 in 5. 67% reported frequent or persistent coughing, and several girls had genital infections after working waist deep in acidic water. In addition, up to 2,000 people died from cobalt mining accidents in the DRC. Miners have also faced sexual assault and forced evictions. What they don't say there is that the sexual assaults are not limited to females. I just want y'all to know. Those in the mines face the most salient human rights abuses and exploitations, but risks in the industry are spread across various groups. Truck drivers who move minerals from Kolwezi in the DRC to Zambia and then to coastal ports for transportation to other countries such as China, a major player in DRC cobalt industry, went on strike in November to demand extra risk allowance. Unfortunately, solutions to this problem are not as easy as they may appear. Some tech companies, such as Apple, have decided to stop purchasing cobalt from small-scale mining companies to avoid any kind of contribution to exploitation and slavery. However, this does not solve the systemic problems such as poverty that drive families to depend on such exploitative mining jobs for income. Instead, the situation underscores the importance of formalizing the cobalt mining industry to encourage regulated work environments, proper equipment and safety procedures, and eradicate child labor. Now, of course, we know all of that is virtually impossible as long as the government is constantly destabilized. Global demand for cobalt will have adverse environmental effects on the DRC, especially if precautions are not taken to ensure sustainability. The extraction and mineral resources include cutting down trees and the contamination of water bodies. Fish are also contaminated with high levels of cobalt, which easily spreads to humans through consumption. Of course, those most vulnerable to the exposure are those who work and live close to lakes and rivers where this waste is dumped. So basically, they're just destroying the country. Moreover, quick extraction of cobalt contributes to global warming, which we're not worried about, as mining operations generate incredibly high carbon dioxide and nitrogen dioxide emissions and substantial electricity consumption. Now, hold on, let's stop right there. Because here's what's interesting, right? I just thought about this. The cobalt mining is used for electric cars, and they claim that electric cars are going to help to lower emissions and things like that. But the mining for the batteries for the electric cars not only is, according to them, contributing to the problem of global warming, but also destroying a country as well. You see what I'm saying? You see what I'm saying? So we see how these things that are supposed to be so-called beneficial or helping to deal with global warming or whatever are contributing to the problem. Now, it says the global community is not ignorant of the modern slavery happening in the DRC. Of course not. Companies such as Apple, BMW, Google, Samsung, Volkswagen, and Tesla, who rely heavily on cobalt for their production, claim to contribute to various initiatives to improve conditions in cobalt mining. In other words, they give lip service. One such initiative is Cobalt for Development, which contributes to training for mine operators and miners to ensure a safer work environment. Again, people are not being paid. They're not even being paid a living wage for something incredibly dangerous, while somebody is running off with, as my mother used to say, $1 gazillion here. Unfortunately, such initiatives still face persistent setbacks to artisanal cobalt, which is produced by small scale miners. Another similar initiative is the Fair Cobalt Alliance. Conditions also do not show improvement in the lives of those working in the mines, which evidence how little effort, if any, these tech companies put into ensuring their safety. Again, like I said, lip service. Country governments also have their share of responsibility. The Congolese government has been criticized for allowing such practices because of greed, corruption, and a lack of empathy reminiscent of African leaders. Let's be honest, that's reminiscent of global leaders around the world. Let's not just make it an African thing. There are very few countries on earth right now where the people of that nation will state that they believe their leaders have their best interests at heart. Because again, all of those leaders and all of those governments, or nearly all of them, I'll say, I always leave room for some exception somewhere, are under the thumb of the administrative wing of the one world government. All right, that's just what it is. When you have the WHO and you have the UN and you have the WEF and the IMF and all these things, they're all working for the same people, and those people aren't the people. Now, says cobalt and genocide. Says researchers from Northwestern University have linked cobalt mining with the increase in violence and insecurity in the DRC. Neighboring African countries such as Rwanda have also been accused of funding rebel groups such as M23 to invade the DRC for cobalt extraction. Rwanda maintains a close relationship with the West, especially the UK, who are eager to have access to the Congo's cobalt. Beyond cobalt, since 1993, wider conflict in the eastern DRC has led to approximately 6 million deaths, according to Human Rights Watch. Now, understand, these are people that don't even care about Black people. So if they're counting that much, it's more than that. Now, it says that the armed M23 group is involved in committing executions and civilian recruitment in the DRC and displaced almost 200,000 civilians. They have also been accused of mass killings and sexual violations. Although the region recently saw calm. More clashes have been reported as of November 2023, following a call by the DRC president, Felix Tshisekedi, for a speedy withdrawal of the UN mission in the country. Tshisekedi's time in office has been riddled with the issues of exploitation and corruption. In 2023, the World Bank suspended funding for humanitarian and development projects in the DRC worth more than $1 billion after the Congolese government dissolved the project fund without warning. This demonstrates how the problem of the DRC are also internally charged. Externally, the United Nations found that Rwandan forces are fighting along M23 to invade the DRC. The hostilities reportedly boil down to Rwanda's desire to benefit from the lucrative Congo mines. No joke. The Congolese finance minister has also said the country has lost almost $1 billion a year to Rwanda's cobalt smuggling. Rwanda denies these allegations. Of course they do. But tensions have increased between both countries as in January 2023, the Rwandan army shot at a Congolese fighter jet that it says violated its airspace. But Rwanda is not alone in this struggle for Congolese resources. Neighbors Uganda and Burundi have also been at the center of various conflicts in the DRC. While cobalt was initially seen as a miracle mineral at promoting clean energy, it has become one of the major vessels of environmental degradation and human exploitation. According to a 2023 UNICEF report, the DRC is close to reaching record levels of verified grave violations against children for a third consecutive year. This is the direct consequence of the global quest for power through cobalt, which is now deeply caught up in a familiar cycle of environmental degradation, exploitation, and greed. All right, brothers and sisters, I think that article covered everything well. And so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to load up a video where they talk about the history of the Congo and get to the root of this current conflict.
What do you really need to know about the Congo? It's the greatest single example in history of how predatory elites rip off millions of people and get away with it. Congo is one of the most mineral-rich countries in the world. It's got gold, diamonds, copper, uranium, cobalt, and coltan, which you use every day. It's in mobile phones, laptops, even jet engines. There's estimated to be more than $24 trillion worth of mineral wealth under Congo soil. So why are its people some of the poorest in the world? It starts with the story of a great crime. Back in 1885, a king in search of an empire created a state the size of Western Europe. King Leopold of Belgium drew borders through ancient kingdoms, forcing 450 different ethnic groups into a new state. Leopold's plunder of the natural resources caused as many as 10 million deaths. It sparked the world's first human rights campaign, which forced the king to hand over the country to the Belgian state. But Congo remained a place where the white man dominated and exploited. Enter a new hope for Africa.
Nous avons connu les ironies, les insultes, les coups que nous devions subir matin.
The independence leader, Patrice Lumumba, inspired millions across the continent, but the West saw Lumumba as an enemy. The Belgians supported a rebellion against the new government in the mineral-rich east of the country. And when Lumumba appealed to the Soviet Union for help, the Belgians conspired with the CIA to murder him. It paved the way for the 3 decades-long rule of President Mobutu. They didn't come any greedier in Africa. It's estimated he stole around half of the $12 billion his country received in aid. The West helped to keep him in power. A people and a country finally breaking under the strain of 26 years of autocratic and brutal dictatorship. But Mobutu's era ended in the most unexpected of ways. Genocide in Rwanda, the country next door, saw millions flee into Congo. War followed them. Rwanda and Uganda sponsored a rebellion that overthrew Mobutu and installed the Kabila family in power. In a decade of war, more than 5 million people are estimated to have died, as 9 African nations and numerous rebel groups fought each other for territory, for control of Congo's riches. Warlords dominated swathes of the country. The word used to describe you is warlord. Not peacemaker, warlord.
I'm not a warlord.
It always comes back to the money.
We're going to make some history together today.
With the tech boom of the new millennium, Congolese coltan was in high demand.
As there is a new commodity that we all want for our mobile phones or for our electric vehicles, the reality often is that Congo has it. And so we start to see the unscrupulous businessmen and women. We start to see the corrupt leaders.
Human rights groups allege that around $750 million in mining revenues has been stolen under the rule of President Joseph Kabila and his cronies. Congo is a country where more than 70% of the population lives below the poverty line, where women suffer some of the highest rates of sexual violence in the world, and human rights can often be abused with impunity.
This soil on which we sleep is the same soil where we buried our children.
Such suffering isn't the natural condition of these people, it's man-made, and that is the tragedy of Congo. The current president, Joseph Kabila, has stayed in power beyond the 2 terms allowed to him under the constitution. But something new and big has been happening in Congo.
They're protesting, they're organizing, they're using social media in a way we've never seen before.
Are you afraid of the state?
No, jamais.
The nation now waits to see if President Kabila will try to cling to power or hold free elections. The fate of 78 million people hangs in the balance. Congo's history, though, makes it hard to feel optimistic. If only Congo's vast natural resources could be used for the benefit of all its people.
So, interestingly enough, that report came from, and I totally forgot about my music. That report came from the BBC. I thought they did a pretty good job, but here's what I noticed. And tell me if y'all notice this too. There was a lot of focus on corrupt leaders in Africa, but there was very little, if almost none, other than talking about the past with Lumumba. There's very little focus on the European powers and their manipulation of the situation to their benefit. There was a lot of talk about different African countries and their neighbors and so forth and so on. But when it comes to what black people, what non-black people are doing, there's very little discussion of that. So I thought that last article was, I thought it was very, what's the word I'm looking for? I thought it covered the subject very well. So we're just going to glance through this next one. And let's see. Since Farnessa says that in the Black Panther movie, they call cobalt vibranium. Well, here's the thing that's interesting about that. I think that because the Black Panther mythos in the comics goes back 50 years. And I'm trying to think, it's 50, actually more than 50. So the vibranium thing, I can't remember when they introduced that, but I think that was just symbolic for the mineral wealth of Africa in general when they put that into the Black Panther mythos. And I can't actually remember what year that they invented the vibranium and everything like that. My comic book nerds, my blurs out there, if y'all know, y'all can let me know that. So we're going to get to, and our wonderful producer says, states the obvious, but we'll put it up anyway. Congo is the wealthiest nation on the planet. These are facts. So let's look at this article real quick. We're not going to go through the whole thing because I think we've covered the subject pretty well. But it says the overlooked crisis in Congo, quote unquote, we live in war. 6 million have died and more than 6 million are displaced after decades of fighting and the ensuing humanitarian crisis in the eastern region of the Democratic Republic of Congo, drawing in neighbors, mercenaries, and militias. An upcoming election is inflaming tempers. This is from December 17th. It says, artillery boomed, shaking the ground as a couple scurried through the streets of Sake, their possessions balanced on their heads in embattled east of the Democratic Republic of Congo. At a crossroads, they passed a giant poster of Congo's president, Felix, and I've been butchering this man's name all night, but oh well, Tshisekedi, which is standing for re-election on Wednesday. Unity, security, prosperity, read the slogan. Isn't that ironic? They hurried along. Says our children were born in war. We live in war. Says Jean Bahati, his face beaded with sweat. Just beaded with sweat, said as he paused for breath. It was the 5th time that he and his wife have been forced to flee, he said. We're so sick of it. They joined 6.5 million people displaced by war in eastern Congo, where a conflict that has dragged on for nearly 3 decades, stoking a vast humanitarian crisis that by some estimates, a little too aggressive there with the button, by some estimates has claimed over 6 million lives, is now lurching into a volatile new phase. Making sense of the mayhem is not easy. Over 100 armed groups and several national armies are vying for supremacy across a region of lakes, mountains, and rainforests slightly bigger than the state of Florida. Meddlesome foreign powers covet its vast resources of gold, oil, and coltan, a mineral used to make cell phones and electric vehicles. Corruption is endemic. Massacres and rapes are common. For all that, age groups struggle to draw attention to the suffering in a country of about 100 million people, even when the numbers affected dwarf other crises. There's a sense of fatalism about Congo, said Cynthia Jones, the World Food Program head in Eastern Congo. People seem to think that's just the way it is. However, this latest phase of the war, which began in earnest 2 years ago, is drawn in unusually clear lines. I don't know. On one side is the M23, a well-organized but ruthless rebel group that the United States and the United Nations says is backed by Rwanda, Congo's eastern neighbor, which is 1/100th the size of Congo. Of course, Rwanda denies any link. Since October, the M23 has seized their main roads into Goma, the regional capital, as well as the hilltops overlooking Sake 10 miles to the west. On the other side is Congo's army, whose troops are notoriously ill-disciplined. Even as fighting raged near Sake last week, drunken soldiers careened through the streets, but their strength is boosted by 2 new allies. One is the Wazalendo Swahili for Patriots, a coalition of once rival militias that the government cobbled together to repel M23, despite the fighters' reputations for factionalism and brutality. The second is a force of about 1,000 Romanian mercenaries, many formerly with the French Foreign Legion, deployed around Goma and Sake. If M23 tries to seize the city, as it briefly did once in 2012, the Romanians are charged with defending it. They are the last line of defense, Romuald, a retired French officer, advising, I lost my place here, advising the Congolese army. This is crazy. We got French. You got Romanians and French, quote unquote, protecting the capital of Congo. Said at a lakeside restaurant in Goma, he asked to omit his surname to protect his security. Sure, buddy. Here we have a map of the area, Democratic, around Lake Kivu. Got North Kivu, Goma, Sake. We have the National Park, Virunga National Park, and then to the east we have Rwanda, and to the northeast, Uganda. I'm just butchering this guy's name, Tshisekedi, who was favored to win the presidential race, initially pushed for peace after his elections in 2019, following a disputed vote. Of course, there was a disputed vote. But that effort failed, and now he's aggressively stoking public hostility towards Rwanda, including personal attacks on its leader, Paul Kagame. Kagame must die, supporters chanted at a rain-soaked, I'm having all types of problems with this site, rain-soaked rally last Sunday in Goma, where the president arrived by after crossing Lake Kivu. At an earlier rally, he likened Mr. Kagame to, Adolf Hitler, a comparison that a Rwandan government spokeswoman called a clear and present threat. So, okay, just reading this, we could very well be on the verge of an open war between Rwanda and Congo, in addition to the war that's already taking place. Rwanda and Congo appeared on the verge of open war in January after Rwanda fired missiles across the border at a Congolese fighter jet as it landed at Goma Airport. Now, though the greatest danger is faced by Congolese civilians, plunged into yet another round of misery. Over half a million people have fled their homes in just the past 2 months, mostly into squalid camps that have sprung up around Goma. A sea of rough huts fashioned from sticks and tarpaulins is expanding across plains littered with sharp black lava rocks. Mount Nyiragongo, an active volcano that forms a dramatic backdrop to Goma, bubbles in the distance. Foul-smelling sludge runs between shelters. Disease outbreaks threaten. Food is scarce. The World Food Program said it has enough to feed only 2.5 million of the estimated 6.3 million who go to bed hungry in the eastern Congo. Even soldiers, are struggling. At the dilapidated public hospital in Sake, a wounded soldier, Jules Amundala, dozed on a filthy mattress, nursing a bullet wound in one leg. Mr. Amundala, 26, said he had been shot in an ambush that killed his commander, but his main concern was food. The hospital hadn't been able to feed patients in several days. In a region where the gun trumps law, women are especially vulnerable. From the camps around Goma, many trek to the nearby Virunga National Park, famed for its mountain gorillas in search of firewood. What they often find, though, are gunmen. They gave me a choice, said Amani, 42, recalling an encounter with 3 armed men in the park on December 8th. They said either we attack you or we kill you. Oh my God. She said, I prefer to be violated as opposed to being killed. The mother of 7 stumbled back to her hut in the displaced camp afterward, bleeding heavily. A couple of days later, she reached a clinic run by Doctors Without Borders where she spoke, asking to identify by only one name. She said it was the second time that she had been violated by gunmen in the war. The pile of wood she had gone to fetch to help feed her children was worth 2, I'm assuming, American dollars. I'm just gonna stop right there. That is the situation there. Brother Kevin says the British media are using the tool of deception by making it look like corrupt and compromised black leaders are the problem inside the country, while the hats steal the resources. Yeah, these are facts. You can put that up. So that's the situation, brothers and sisters. I think we've covered that thoroughly. I mean, it's just a nightmare. It's a nightmare. So, and Sis Farnessa says, I'm tired of seeing black people being willing to kill other black people for money and helping the hat steal the wealth from the people. You and I both. Now, we're going to totally shift from the African continent to here in America for our next article. And we're going to talk about Chicago's quote unquote black versus migrant divide. And this is from Politico. And so as they talk about displaced people in the Congo and forced migration and things like that, we have here in America a not so forced migration. And the states in the South have decided that if Mr. Biden isn't going to do anything about, let's call it what it is, illegal immigration. I don't know how we stop saying illegal immigration, because it's illegal because the people they just thrown over the border. As Mr. Biden has decided he's not going to do anything about it whatsoever. Black people are now affected because the people in those states, in the southern states, that Texas, and especially Texas, some of the other states near there, are just shipping these people to the Democratic states, which means they're coming to places like New York, Chicago, DC, and I'm sure some other cities, and then these people are getting resources that the people who are already there need, because the economy has been garbage since Biden has been in office. This is just what it is. So we're going to get into this article real quick. It says the painful effect of illegal immigration on black communities was laid bare Wednesday during a heated debate by the Chicago City Council, which ultimately voted in favor of transferring $51 million in city funds to help migrants. Again, they have a black mayor, by the way. It says Alderman Jeanette Taylor spoke through tears on the issue. Her ward has been the center of controversy after residents there criticized plans for a shuttered school to be used as a respite center for migrants. Residents worried migrants would only make access to food and transportation more difficult. Similar concerns fueled the city council debate. I'm so tired of when it's a crisis for everybody else, we got to do something. But when we're having this violence in the black community, nothing gets said or nothing gets done, Taylor said. It is our responsibility. No, my bad. Let me try again. It ain't our responsibility to take care of everybody else. And we're tired because we do just that. When we fought for civil rights, we fought just to drink out of a fountain. It was just us. She emphasized fountain, by the way, trying to keep it as clean as possible. Her powerful speech prompted a standing ovation from fellow council members. But when she voted in favor of funding for migrants, wait, what? You said all that, then you voted for it? The activists in gallery called her a sellout and a traitor, as they should have. And then this person is saying, Andre Vasquez described the black versus migrant tension as a crabs in a barrel. No, that's false. That's a lie. It's not crabs in a barrel. You don't belong here. We've been here since the beginning. We've suffered more than anybody else. You don't belong here. Go back where you came from. Make your situation better. Ain't that what they tell everybody else? So it's not crabs in the barrel because you don't belong here. Plain and simple. Let's just not overlook that. But remember, what did Biden say? He said, you all, meaning black people, better start getting along with these, I don't know if he said Mexicans or immigrants or whatever he said, or Hispanics or whatever term he used. He said, y'all just gonna have to deal with it. Why? Because he knew he was gonna allow these people to flow over the border. So they talking about who voted for it and who voted against it. We're not gonna get into the individual names because I'm sure the people in Chicago are aware of, and if you're not, you can go to Politico and look up the information. But we're going to see what the mayor said or did. It says Mayor Brandon Johnson tried to keep the calm throughout the 90-minute hearing, allowing activists to shout from the gallery up to a point before asking the sergeant at arms to escort them from the chamber. Later, he told reporters he was heartened by the debate. Yeah, I'm sure. The vast majority of people recognize the challenges we have. Is anyone going to disagree that black communities have been disinvested? No, no one's going to disagree with that, he said, adding the tone of the meeting was a demonstration of how we move forward. There really is enough for everyone. That's a lie, because if there was enough for everyone, then everyone would have had enough before these people came here and made the situation that was horrible in Chicago and horrible for black people everywhere in America and everywhere on earth. Wouldn't have been as horrible, but it's even more horrible with this situation where you bring in more people to take and cut a small piece of the pie even smaller. But I digress. We're just gonna bypass that article because I don't even want to even read no more or hear no more what this Negro got to say, because it just thinking about these Negro leaders just make me want to throw up sometimes. So what we're going to do is, now that I've regained my composure, we're going to look at a video on this situation, and then we're going to get through a second article. So I'm going to pause that. I'm going to load up this video, and then we'll come back and read another article on this.
Outbursts, at times so heated, police had to step in. We're talking about city council today and a vote to spend $51 million on helping migrants here in Chicago. CBS 2 political investigator Dana Kosloff was there for all the action, and Dana, strong feelings all around.
Yeah, Erica, and for many different reasons, among them the fact that this $51 million approved today is only a short-term fix, and more money will be needed in just weeks.
We cannot continue to falsely pit communities against one another.
Deep emotional wounds coming to the surface.
As black people who have been hurt continuously by the city and country it loves, it ain't our responsibility to take care of everybody else.
And anger.
We don't want to have to recall anybody. We don't want to have to protest anybody, but we are not going to be ignored, Brandon. Mayor Johnson.
Many in Chicago's black community and the city council speaking out against spending $51 million to house migrants, asking when will the help for them finally become a reality.
And it cannot be put on the backs of the residents of Chicago without showing them that they're getting something out of this.
Mayor Brandon Johnson, presiding over his second full city council meeting, had to ask for calm more than once.
Will the Sergeant of Arms please restore some order?
Police also intervening at one point to allow the meeting to proceed. Ultimately, the measure passed with 34 votes. Many who voted to approve the money, like 49th Ward Alderwoman Maria Haddon, call this an immediate crisis that needs attention. But, she says, so do concerns of the city's black residents.
Why are black people in Chicago and some communities so angry? Why is all this kind of anti-immigrant sentiment coming up? And I want to explain to folks, it's because if we cared as much about black people and had over the decades as we do about everyone else, we wouldn't be here.
But the money from a 2021 budget surplus will only last 1 month. Many alderpeople say it's time for a long-term plan and some state and federal help. With that, should taxpayers be concerned?
I think we should all be concerned anytime we're having to utilize this level of resources on a temporary situation, especially with not a real sight of federal support coming.
Hours after the meeting, Mayor Brandon Johnson offered no specifics.
We're going to have to dig in a little bit deeper in the city of Chicago, but that's going to be a collaborative approach.
As for a timeline for a long-term plan to deal with this issue, there isn't one. I'm live outside Chicago City Hall in the Loop. Dana Kozlov, CBS 2 News.
Dana, thanks.
Well, you got to admire their honesty for saying, we don't have a plan. We don't have a solution. We're just going to throw money at these people. And good luck, right? Anyway. And Brother Kevin says, the Democratic Party as a whole is in big trouble with the migrant crisis. It appears that way. And I'll just say that they've done an excellent job of disrespecting black people. Again. You know? So, and it's funny you said that too, brother. It's almost like you know where we're going here. The next article real quick. This is from the Philadelphia Tribune. So, okay, let's add Philadelphia to the list. And this is from a year and a half ago, which is interesting. It says Congress continues to relentlessly push immigration policies that'll make black people poorer. Well, they get right to the point here now, don't they? It says that's not their stated goal. Well, actually, it kind of was Biden's stated goal. But anyway, that's not their stated goal, of course, but that'll nevertheless be the end result of their proposal to amnesty millions of illegal immigrants and boost the level of legal immigration. The lasting effects of uncontrolled mass immigration on Black Americans are plainly obvious and have been well documented throughout our country's history. So how can any black politician in good conscience advocate for a more expansive immigration policy that will continue to do us harm? Don't listen to those who say we supporters of immigration reduction want to put an end to it or that we're anti-immigrant. They're only trying to shut down the debate. For decades, I have worked to welcome and assimilate immigrants in Miami, a city with one of the largest foreign-born populations in the U.S. I have also tried to convince our black leaders that our immigration policy needs to be primarily focused on the well-being of those already here, those of us that supposedly represent and whose vote, those of us who they supposedly represent, and they who they supposedly represent and whose vote they rely on to stay in office. By many measures, the economic gap between black and white workers, again, this is just working class people. This don't have nothing to do with the people who actually have money. Between black and white workers in recent years have gotten worse. In 1970, for instance, before I was born, black men earned 59% as much as white men. By 2019, that figure had dipped to 56%. Let's stop right there. So literally in the time where Jim Crow was just ending, civil rights bills had just been passed, but not always already implemented, black men earned higher percentage than they do now after nearly 60 years of integration. For decades, unemployment rates amongst Black Americans has consistently been about double those of white Americans. For decades. There is no single explanation for these racial disparities, of course. But decades of mass immigration have almost certainly made the problem worse. Consider the years 1940 to 1980. So literally during Jim Crow time up until the election of Ronald Reagan, a period of comparatively lower immigration that generally led to tight labor markets. And immigration policy expert Roy Beck points out in his new book, Back of the Hiring Line, Black men saw their real incomes increase fourfold during those decades. Black men's earnings actually rose faster than white men's from, think about this, during Jim Crow times, World War II, Korean War, Vietnam, Civil Rights Movement, Black people get lynched, burned, up until Jimmy Carter's presidency, the end of Jimmy Carter's presidency. Black people were doing better during those times, Black men economically, than now. I'm gonna give y'all a minute to process that. That's how crazy it is, and that's how devastating this immigration is. And that is not including what's happening right now. During that same period, the share of Black Americans who were considered middle class exploded from 22% to 71%. Had these trends continued, it's hard to imagine racial disparities in earnings and employment persisting for much longer. Certainly not to the degree that we see today. But progress amongst Black workers leveled off around 1970. So progress amongst Black workers leveled off before I was even born. 5 years after Congress passed laws that significantly increased rates of immigration from roughly 250,000 a year or $250,000 a year in the middle of the 20th century to over 1 million annually. And this is not accounting for the people who come here illegal. Think about it. So literally, we can see this goal was to replace Black people, because during the same time where they were passing these various civil rights laws, which did not specifically say that they are for Black people, they started bringing in people from other countries and then giving them the rights that we fought and died for. Whereas immigrants accounted for 4.7% of the population in 1970, they now make up over 13.7%, an almost threefold increase. Many immigrants are indeed hardworking and law-abiding. I don't care. But the sheer number of newcomers entering the U.S. labor market year after year has created new economic barriers for low-skilled American workers, especially Black people. Indeed, as the supply of less educated labor increases due to immigration, competition for jobs requiring a high school degree or less become much greater, and Black Americans suffer disproportionately. A 2006 paper published by the National Bureau of Economic Research estimates that the influx of immigration between 1980 and 2000 reduced wage of Black high school dropouts by 8%, reduced the employment rate by 7.4 percentage points, and increased the incarceration rates by 1.7 percentage points. Folks on the left used to find this disparate impact disturbing. President Clinton's Council of Economic Advisors plainly warned that immigration has increased the relative supply of less educated labor and appears to have contributed to increased inequality of income. Yeah, it's ironic that they would put it out there because they ain't do nothing about it. Anyway, well, many of them no longer realize that many of them are ignoring that immigration had negative consequences. Oh, he said, or no longer care. Yeah, that's it. They don't care. Right, that's the part. Many Black Many black lawmakers in Congress are working to grant amnesty to over 6 million illegal aliens, a number that would likely be much higher, a move that immediately increased labor market competition and encouraged more people to come here illegally in hopes of future amnesty. Black lawmakers also want to increase the number of green cards available to legal immigrants. The Congressional Black Caucus has endorsed amnesty and an increase in illegal immigration. Why? The CBC, the Congressional Black Caucus, because it's dead and stinking, has put forth no reasonable explanation, because somebody is putting money in their pocket and they are slaves of the people who are paying them, and we know who those people are. Y'all can put it in the chat. Its members haven't made a case for how increasing immigration would benefit black people, because it won't. As my friend Roy Beck told me, economic history demonstrates that every time immigration levels have risen significantly, inequality has grown as well. The reverse is also true. So ask yourselves, why are so many black politicians in DC intent on increasing immigration yet so adamantly opposed to even having a debate about reducing it? It's undeniable that mass immigration has come at a substantial cost to black Americans. That doesn't mean that, they don't deserve our compassion. I ain't even reading that part. I don't care. Simply put, black people suffer when they bring other people over. Period. End of discussion. Brothers and sisters, we talk about corruption over in Uganda and Kenya and all that, and those leaders willing to sell them out. And here we are. Greetings to and Mambo. And here we are looking at the Congressional Black Caucus and our own so-called political leaders just selling us down the river to bring in our replacements. So one thing I always talk about is, if black people in America and black people on the continent and black people in the Caribbean had a meeting, I'm talking about the regular people, not the leaders, and they compared notes, the stories and the problems and the corporates would sound very familiar to each other, right? That's why I do this program. That's why I want it to go around the world, because we'll realize that we have a lot more in common than we want to admit. So I got 2 more articles and then we'll be done. So thank you all for your patience, brothers and sisters. Says, this is from The Hill. This is from back in May. It says 34%, 1 in 3 black people say Biden's policies have helped them, according to this survey. And we'll go through this quickly. It says black Americans continue to be the core supporter of the Biden administration. I have absolutely no idea why, according to a new Ipsos Washington Post survey. Now, mind you, this is 6 months ago, so things have probably changed. The survey found that 66% of black American respondents approve. Now, this is weird. This, me and Sister Sydney were talking about cognitive dissonance. Let's listen to this. The survey found that 66% of black American respondents approve of the job that Biden has done, while 34% believe his policies have helped them. So half as many people who approve think that what he's doing is beneficial for black people. Somebody help me out. How does that make sense? How can you approve of what he's doing if what he's doing isn't benefiting black people? Let's look at it a little more. It says Biden made racial justice a major component of his 2020 campaign. On his first day in office, he signed an executive order meant to advance racial equality. I should have looked that up to see what that was, because I don't even know what it was. On October last year, the president pardoned everyone convicted of simple marijuana under federal law. Black Americans are nearly 4 times more likely than white Americans to be arrested for marijuana, according to the ACLU. Biden also signed legislation to address the racial wealth divide. Again, not really sure what that is. Says the further advancing racial equality and support for underserved communities through the federal government order established plans to assess barriers facing underserved communities and offer solutions for access to policies and programs. Man, the whole policies and programs thing, man, is a bunch of gobbledygook that doesn't mean anything. And most people don't even understand how they can get this stuff, even if they're qualified for it. But the fact that their qualifications for it mean anyway is a barrier in and of itself. It also required agencies to investigate and address any algorithmic discrimination in technology services. So literally, the technology is racist, and they're going to investigate that. The president also drew praise for a student loan forgiveness plan, which would also forgive up to $20,000 of student loan for eligible students. Sorry, doesn't benefit me, don't care. Just give us the money yours. Anyway, Black adults are more likely to have higher rates of student loan debt than their white counterparts, in part due to issues regarding generational wealth. That we know. About 24% of Black adults have federal student loan debt, according to only 14% of whites. So in essence, 1 in 4 Black people, 1 in 7 of whites. On average, Black college graduates owe $7,400 more than their white peers when they graduate. According to the Brookings Institute, 4 years after graduation, Black borrowers owe an average of $52,000 compared with $28,000 for their white counterparts. But Biden also made inroads with Black America during his State of the Union address when he spoke of the talk so many Black families have with their children to avoid police brutality. This, coupled with his efforts to pass police reform, resonated with Black Americans on both sides of the law. Now, let's stop right there. Mr. Biden, despite all of that stuff that they just talked about, there's been no decrease in police violence. And we read that his open border policies are basically destroying Black America. So anything that he's so-called doing, which a lot of this is just rhetoric, gobbledygook, and has no benefit for Black people in reality, is worthless and useless. But we're covering the past and the future. The past, we're looking at his record. The future, we got an election coming up. I'm going to just say this. I read an article where Black people in Chicago are starting to look at alternatives to the Democratic Party. We really need to weigh in the balance, both groups. And let's be realistic. We understand as Black people in America that neither party is for us. That's obvious. The question is, can we leverage our vote so that we can get some concessions from somebody for our benefit? That's the question that we have to have, right? So lastly, the last thing I want to look at, and then we can close out, is, because we looked at a little bit of Mr. Biden's record. And this, what I'm about to look at now, is an assumption that, one, Mr. Trump is going to win, which they're doing everything in their power for him not to win. So if he wins, and I mean win the Republican nomination, not the presidency, we're going to look a little bit at his platinum plan that he laid out in 2020. Because I remember a lot of controversy about people meeting with Trump. I don't remember anybody actually talking about what he was talking about. So I'm going to look at that, and then we're going to close out. Says the Platinum Plan, President Trump's pillars. Opportunity. Says by achieving historic employment levels for Black Americans, as well as increasing access to capital for new investments, President Trump has committed to ensuring all Black Americans can achieve the quote-unquote American dream. Security. By signing into law the celebrated First Step Act, President Trump has brought common sense criminal justice reform to the American people for the first time in decades, while ensuring that our streets and communities are safe for families and business owners. Well, I'm going to be honest, Mr. Trump. I can't really remember how safe it was when you were in office, but things have definitely got worse on that aspect since you left. I'm not saying that correlation is causation. I'm just saying, yeah, that idea is thrown out the window. Prosperity. As the first president to provide long-term funding to historically black colleges and universities, this administration continues to seek immediate generational advancement for black. Wait a minute, for black Americans. He the first president to provide long. Can somebody fact check this? The first president to provide long-term funding to historically black to HBCUs. Somebody fact check that. I'm not saying. I mean, sure they wouldn't put it in here. Okay, I didn't know that. As demonstrated through his action, fairness, as demonstrated through his actions to initiate investment into opportunity zones, as well as address health disparities, wage gaps, and necessary educational reforms, President Trump works every day to advance fair and justice for Black America. Also, not here, Trump is against illegal immigration. Here's what's interesting. I don't think, how can I put it? I have no illusions that Mr. Trump loves black people. In fact, no white people love black people, for those that don't know. But I know for a fact Mr. Trump has made a calculus that most other politicians haven't. Mr. Trump is more willing to deal with black people because he knows us. He's had black people work for him. He knows that black people are largely loyal to America. We will fight and die in their wars. We will wrap ourselves up in a flag. We will celebrate their, we will uphold their institutions and celebrate their holidays and cultural norms. And the relationship between black and white America, while always contentious, has been established. Trump knows this. Literally, I believe he's doing the devil you know is better than the devil you don't think. But here is the one part that I want to look at, because this is one of the things that really affects black people that we never discuss. So where he talks about, let me see if I can find it real quick. Just make it quick. Not the 3 million jobs. Increase access to capital in the black communities by $500 billion or $500 billion. Here is one of the major problems in the black community that we never talk about, right? The reason black businesses don't grow and can't sustain and can't maintain is not because we don't have ideas or we don't have any intelligent business persons or we don't have any of those things, right? Or that we're incapable in any way, shape, or form, or anything like that. The lack of capital investment, the lack of angel investors, the lack of, because here's the thing that most of us don't realize, and I started looking this stuff up last year. There are a lot of tech companies and a lot of these new companies that are largely, or have been largely, they've been virtually insolvent if it wasn't for investments and if it wasn't for easy money when the cost of money was low with the interest rates, right? So a lot of these companies, big time tech companies, were burning through cash, and they were able to maintain and keep themselves afloat until they became profitable over years. Most of the time, black people don't have access to that capital, so we don't get that opportunity to grow beyond that stage where you're a small company where you can get to where you can hire people. You can hire people who are more technically proficient. You can hire more workers and pay workers a living wage where they have loyalty to your company, and your company begins to grow. And then eventually maybe you do an IPO, a public offering, you go public and you receive money because you sell stock in your company and you get big and boom. You don't see that because we don't have access to the capital to go beyond that step where you go from mom and pop shop to major corporation. There's a big wide chasm in the middle there that is largely due to funding from people outside of yourself and outside of your immediate family. Those things don't happen. But if Trump and 500, he said 500 billion, that's not an insignificant number. I would like to see the number that we currently receive. But if we focus on that and made business plans around that, we could significantly change our economic standing by our own businesses being able to sustain and to hire ourselves and to build up our communities from that and change the lives of our own people. This is what he put on the table apparently in 2020. And I didn't hear anybody talk about that aspect of it, because here's one of the things that happened that we never talk about. And then I get ready to close out. The same way that we've seen in America in general, a large amount of the wealth being sucked upward toward the people at the top of the economic pyramid is the same way that money is being distributed in the Black community. No one has done a study on it, and we haven't thought about it. But I'll just give an example, right? Let's just look at the NBA, because I believe they have guaranteed contracts. You have a small number of Black men who are making, I don't even know what the league average is anymore. I don't know. I haven't followed the NBA in a while, but I see a lot of $40, $50 million contracts floating around nowadays. Let's say the league average is, despite that, let's say maybe the minimum is $3 million or so. I have no idea. Let's say the league average is $15 million. Every year, they draft people. They draft a group of young Black males and other people, make them millionaires, and people have opportunity 5 to 10 years to make, let's say $3 million a year. Let's say you leave the league with $15 million. Not an insignificant amount of money. If you manage your money right, enough money to last you the rest of your life, plus you get notoriety and you can get free stuff. Like, there's a lot of things you can get just by saying I was the power forward of the Knicks or whatever the case may be. Athletes, entertainers receive a large amount of money in our communities, but they receive it at younger ages, and they're not really educated and skilled in how to take and use that wealth to transform their communities. Even if they have the desire, they don't have the skill and the know-how. So while the masses of our people look at those people as someone to look up to, those people, even though they have immense amounts of money, many times have no desire and oftentimes no capacity to be of benefit to our people. But it gives us the illusion, I'll use the term, the illusion of inclusion. And I believe, even though we hear certain people use the term now, I believe that term actually came from, our sister, Queen Mother Julia Hare, who had joined the ancestral realm. I believe she was the first one I remember saying that term. So to me, out of all the things that I saw on Trump's platinum plan, that was the one that I found most notable. But here again, as we were talking about immigration, look at what he says here: immigration policy that protects American jobs. That would benefit us. It just would. onshore manufacturing to advance jobs opportunities for Black community. Again, a lot of people on the West Coast got their homes because people moved from places like Louisiana and Texas, moved out to LA, and were doing manufacturing and building planes and ships and stuff during the war. And that's where they bought their homes and were able to settle into the West Coast. We don't do manufacturing as much. Manufacturing was outsourced starting in the 80s with Reagan, which was something that our beloved ancestor, Dr. Amos Wilson, was telling us about, and telling us about the rise of the East. At the time, it was most evident in Japan, but he talked about the whole region. And then, of course, we saw China later on. Our ancestors warned us about. So all I'm saying is, and I will do a deeper dive as we get closer to the election, we have to actually look at what everybody's saying they're going to do. Right? Like, some of the things that people are saying they're going to do benefit us. And some of the things that people saying they're going to, and some of the things they're doing is detrimental to us. And some of the things people said they were going to do would have been beneficial. And then some of the things they were going to do would have been detrimental. Because while Trump has shown a willingness to let people out who have been wrongly convicted, you know good and well he's not going to do anything about police brutality. That's par for the course. So neither group of people are going to be totally beneficial to us, but the reality of the situation is, if one group is going to do something that allow us to be beneficial to ourselves and the other one isn't, then you got to take a look at it. So brothers and sisters, those are 3 or 4 of the major stories of 2023 that affect Black people globally and here in America. I wanted to cover those things because I haven't covered them, and they also are things that are covering that are going to affect us going into 2024. So I thank you all, everybody who's hung in there. I knew it was going to be a long show. I didn't know how long it was going to be, but the reality of the situation is I wanted to end the year with a bang. Also, tomorrow at 8 o'clock, I will have another radical report coming up. It's going to deal with a transsexual pedo from Philadelphia, Kendall Stevens. I'm going to cover that story. So be on the lookout for that. Don't forget to make sure you like, share, and subscribe. If you feel like the information that was covered here was beneficial, you can donate via Cash App at $ DC Radical 1. You can follow me on Instagram at dc.radical1, Twitter at dc_radical_one, on OTWTube at DC Radical 1. Again, the Cash App is $ DC Radical 1. And you can email me at dc.radical_1@protonmail.com. And again, if you would like to sponsor a show or you would like promotion for your business or your service via my social media, including YouTube, Twitter, Threads, and Instagram, you can email me at dc.radical_1@protonmail.com. So with that, brothers and sisters, I thank you all for listening. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. I am your brother, DC Radical 1. And with that, I say, a BB for Hodie and straight Black pride. Thank you for watching this video. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Also follow us on our other social media platforms. On Instagram, we're at dc.radical, the numeral 1. On Twitter, we're at DC_radical_ONE. And the Cash App is $DC Radical 1. Again, thank you for subscribing. A big for ODA and straight black pride.